All right, I think we're ready to start. Again, good morning. I'm sure it's a little bit later in Porto than it is here. I think right now it's roughly about 4:20 a.m. in Central Standard Time. So if I'm a little bit groggy, please forgive me. I'm going to try and be energetic as usual for everyone. So let's talk about what this talk is for. This is kind of a little bit of a use case scenario in which I was bringing up many different junior developers, or even some developers who just never done anything really project driven before. And while it's very easy to go down the rabbit hole of Hello World and examples that you see online, I found that just a basic workflow was evading some of the developers, at least in the initial few weeks. So while this is geared towards beginners to OAuth and to what it would be like to set up basic repos and put things all the way to deployment, I think it's really important, even if you are not a junior or a mid, for you to look at how perhaps to structure your own teaching. And so this is part of the reason that I give this talk. It also is centered around .NET Framework 4.7, which is, of course, different than what I'm all jazzed about lately, which, of course, is .NET 5, and that's coming pretty soon here. So this is all going to be done with an external auth provider. I work for Octa, and I don't actually think I have anything really to show you except for my full t-shirt. And Octa is an alternative external auth provider that can secure your API endpoints. And so when I'm explaining this again to junior developers, I find that this sample that I'm going to show you seems to be the easiest one. If any of you have any questions for me, please hold them until the end because I might be able to answer them as we go. So let's talk about the objectives of this talk. When we think about what it's like to build something as simple as an API, I use the word simple quite loosely, we think, all right, just create a project and then deploy it to Azure. I'm choosing Azure as the host today because why not? And then profit. 1, 2, 3. Sounds simple. Sounds like what my project manager would have said to me. Is that, come on, hurry up, let's just get something out there. But in reality, we do lots of micro steps that many of us take for granted. So what it actually ends up looking like is more like this, which is the steps we're going to do today. Create a repo, then create your web API project. Again, I'm going to do this in Framework because quite a few of my clients still, of course, use Framework. Deploy to Azure with a quick publish. Then we're going to make some changes. This is the moment where I just have, again, my juniors do this for me and show me. And even though it sounds like a simple task, making sure to set up the continuous deployment and integration actually is a little bit more complicated than you think. Then we're going to see what breaks after we do just those basic things. So far, everything is templatized. Everything is just in the beginning. Then we're going to set up a CRED endpoint. When I say CRED endpoint, really what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a get. We're not going to go all the way down the rabbit hole of deletes and stuff like that, but we are going to do a basic get so you can understand that. And then we're going to redeploy it and see what broke again. Then we're going to go ahead and add in that external auth provider. Again, we're going to do this with OAuth 2 and OIDC. Then we're going to redeploy it and see what broke again, because this is what you should be doing. You should not code for 2 days and then deploy it and wonder why things are broken. It's much easier to do this incrementally. And then we're going to create an API client access credential set to use in Postman. And I'm going to test it out in Postman that way. And then we're going to profit. So from 3 to 13 steps, just a little bit more rapid. All right, first we're going to create a repo. So what we're going to do today, sorry about that. What we're going to do today is we're going to go through each one of these steps in a row. And again, if beginning stuff is not your cup of tea, I totally understand. There's lots of awesome talks today, but I actually think this is a little bit fun to go over. All right, because this is .NET Framework and I'm on a Mac, I'm going to switch over to VMware. VMware is the way that I am running Windows 10 on here. We're going to start off in our repositories. As you can see here, I've got several already here, but the way that I would do this is I would ask somebody to go ahead and just new up a repo for whatever it is that they were doing. In this case, it would be, let's see, I'm going to call this real world guide. And you see it looks like it is available. And I'm going to leave it public for this purpose, but of course you can certainly choose to make it private at the time and just create this. I always initialize with a README, and then we go from here. Now there's a couple of ways, of course, you can do this, and this all may seem incredibly basic, but I promise you that half the time um, my developers don't really know exactly where to start, and that's fine. So let's start here. So now that we've got just the basic repo, what would you do next? Would you clone it? Would you pull it down? What would you do? For me, I have GitHub Desktop installed here. Now you can certainly do things directly on the command line, but because oftentimes I really embrace the visual aspects of learning, I like to use visual tools, which is why I also like Visual Studio, right? So I'm going to decide to clone or download whatever it is that I want to pull down. Okay, in this case, I'll just like open it in the desktop or clone it from here, right? So copy that. Someone's mic is on. Hopefully you can still hear me all right. Yes. Excellent. Okay. Oops, sorry. That. And I'm going to go ahead and give you the moment where I show you that there's a bunch of different connections that if you were to sign in with the GitHub extension from Visual Studio, this is where you would pull them down, right? So let's pull one of these down. Of course, I went ahead and made just a sample one for you, but let's pull down this one. It is a little slow for me. There we go. I'm going to touch that and go from there. I always have a final project all laid out for you guys so you don't have to wait too long, but it's still important to do the stuff. It looks like this link is okay. Well, everything it says is up to date, so we should be good to go. And I want to make sure that I'm right on track with everything. And now we're going to create a web API project. All right. So let's do that. I think we went ahead and just created a basic one. So now, because I'm going to choose to do, again, the framework version of this, I'm going to select 472. You can do whatever version you'd like. It's everything in the same directory. I'm going to call this oh, no. It's always the danger of running a VM. Oh, don't be like this. That's always excellent. That's always fun. My VM just crashed. So this is, again, very real world situation. All right, give it a second to see if it can reboot. Okay, good. Well, my baked version is still there, and hopefully it'll just calm down here in a second. Good deal. All right. So let's pretend that you've already deployed just the basic thing. You created a new API project. You did nothing, changed nothing. That's usually what I ask them to do next, is to push it directly. And then after you do that, you're going to make some changes. So inside of Azure, I'm just going to go ahead and show you what I've got set up here. if you were to just log into your basic portal, we're looking to push this as an Azure app service, okay? Wow, it kicked me out of everything. I had it all nice and set up for you. It will actually go. This is so fun. Fourth time's the charm. All right, well, let's go ahead and pull up an app service. All I did was create a new one. Now in a real world instance, what you would do is, it depends on the size, of course, of the company, your IT department, but I don't know about you, but the average junior developer doesn't get access to this kind of stuff. And so usually it would be set up for them ahead of time. And so they would just come in here to understand how to connect everything together. So while this instance was set up for them, what is important here is that we pay attention to how to deploy this. So if you scroll down to deployment, okay, deployment center here, you're probably going to be very familiar, if you're familiar with Azure at all the different ways in which you can deploy your apps. Now, in a brand new one, it would be a different kind of a process than the one that is connected here. So let's go ahead and create a new resource. That is web app, just so I can show you how I set it up. Great. Okay. 2020. Yep, cool. I'm going to select my runtime to match, of course, what I had there, which is version 4.7. And then, of course, your plan will be really important here. When you're creating an API for others to consume, which is what we are doing here, we are going to be the API of truth. Let's say that we are the Star Wars API and want to have everybody call us to get information about specific characters. It's going to be really important that you plan out your host provider and how you want to limit or perhaps not limit how many times your API can get hit, because it can get very expensive on different hosts if you don't pay attention to that. In this case, I just have a basic one to show you, but this is one step that you will need to take into consideration whenever you're deciding how much money you're going to spend. I'm going to review that and then create service. Perfect. Cool. Now, while this deployment is underway, I'm going to go back here and I'm going to show you a little something about this controller. As you can see, there's not really like a whole lot going on here. In fact, that's really all that's going on. All I'm doing is just a basic get request that returns a string. Now, I can certainly change this to be whatever I'd like. And in this case, I'd love for it to say hello to Porto and save that. And of course, since this one is correctly connected, I can go ahead and do any sort of commit message that I'd like here, which is just name change and get request. Commit that, sync it, and push. Now, I actually prefer doing this command line, but since everything's integrated into Visual Studio, sometimes it's also, again, easier to do the little click a button thing. Of course, I understand that there, again, we have command windows too that we can also use. This is just one way that I have found to be the most effective, at least for the initial teaching. So now that's been pushed. I'm just going to double check that it was. I'm going to take a look at my repos and see if the change that I made was pushed. Cool. Yep, name change in get request. I know it's a little small, but hopefully you can see it done. Excellent. So now we're going to go back here. It says that our deployment is complete. Awesome. We're going to take a look at that resource. And of course, now we have a URL to get into this. It'll say right there, here, and there's nothing really connected to it yet. That's because we haven't pointed it at our GitHub repo for our web API. So now that we have our app service instance, we need to connect it. And in order to do that, you can go down to Deployment Center. Now, I usually, this is the part where I ask everybody, what have you used before? Have you tried Azure Pipelines? Have you tried all of these? Awesome. When we started doing deployments about 5 years ago or so, we actually used something called Kudu. I would love to know if you want to comment later if any of you use this, but it's actually a pretty stripped down version and the backbone of what eventually turned into pipelines, and of course, GitHub as well. So the way that you would do this is you would sign in with your GitHub information, and of course, it could be company-wide as well, and then it would deploy directly from a Git or material repo. So this is, we're going to click external here, click continue, and then you'll see that very famous K Swiss Army knife there. That represents Kudu. Now this is something that probably hasn't really been talked about since 2014, but we find it so helpful if you don't have the budget to go ahead and set up an entire Azure DevOps or Azure pipelines. This is an excellent way to just get something out there really fast that has continuous integration. So anytime you check something into that GitHub repo, it will monitor it, and then it will go ahead and pull in any changes and refresh your website automatically. Right, so we're going to select that, click continue, and now this is the part where you select which repo it's going to be for. So I'm going to grab that repo, go back here, tell it to go ahead and use the master branch, leave it on Git, and tell it that actually it is not a private repo, but if it was, this is where I would put my username and password. I just happen to publish this publicly, but this is also where you could secure it. Okay. Right. Cool. Now it's setting up the deployment. While it's doing that, you'll see that there are different steps as to what it's doing. Like right now, it's just fetching the deployment data. It has logs every time it does anything. So this is a nice screen to sit on. Obviously now, it tells you exactly where it's getting it from. This is kind of fun to watch anytime you are pushing changes to it. Excellent. Right. And it looks like it already pulled in the last check-in message as well. Hopefully you guys can see that. And it's running deployment, and it'll let me know when it's completely deployed.
This is a convoluted and artificial set of constraints. But, most places there are constraints around what you can and cannot do. One of the interesting kind of side things that you can do in the architecture role is you're the person who's scanning the horizon. You're going to NBC, you're going to conferences and meetups, and you're learning about what's out.
All right, then. Good morning to you, too. Okay, so now you see that we have success. It's active here. So we should be able to, in theory, go to the URL that has been generated for our app service. And we should be able to see what would look like a web API template. Well, nope, we've got a runtime there. Oh, that's awesome. See what we've got here. Let me major keys here. Where's that one? Let me see if this will just restore it. Which also gives me the opportunity to see if that truly is completely connected all the way up to the app service. So now that it's been pushed there, I verify that it got all the way up to my repo. Looks like it did. We start up there. So in theory, I should be able to go to the deployment center on my app and see if it got pulled yet. Not yet. Looks like it didn't just yet. So I can also manually push sync right there too if you don't want to wait for it to pull every so often. I can't remember exactly how long it takes to pull. It's not too terribly long. I just got really impatient. So as you see, here's restore startup. So that means it also is restarting the whole thing. So if you click on it, sometimes it takes a minute to refresh just because it's literally rebooting it. Okay, let's see if that changes anything. No, that's excellent. Let's go to the other actions that I have set up. Let me load this up and see what we've got going on. So what I have here is another service that's pointed at the exact same GitHub. That's what I expected to see. So I'll have to troubleshoot what it was about the other one that was not pulling correctly. But this is what I'd expect to see. I'd expect to go to the API and be able to drill down. Awesome. All right. So now that we are connected and we know that any changes that we make will get propagated up, sure, let me go to the next slide. Now we set up our CRUD endpoint, which of course I already kind of did here, and I just wanted to show you what that is. Okay. Again, all I'm doing here, of course, is just something basic. We made a change. It's pretty easy. Now, redeployed to see what broke. This is like the real world. You guys are getting a nice glimpse of that. Yes. Okay, good. Everything's loading up here. Excellent. Now, we need to secure the API, which is the fun part of this. Now this is my favorite part because I get to use my work for, right? So let's go into my Octa dashboard. So you can get a free Octa account that's free forever, and it comes with like 5,000 inactive users and 1,000 active users. So an active user is just somebody who logs in once in a month. Now, when it comes to API requests, this is a little bit different, and you can, of course, like email them and ask them about pricing about that. I'm not a salesperson. I just love to show you how it works. So in this instance, instead of a user logging in with their credentials, this is something called the client credential flow. This is where you would give a set of client credentials to somebody who registers with you to use your API, to hit it, to get all that Star Wars data, right? In order to do that, you would land on your dashboard here after you create an account. It's pretty easy. Just go to developer.octa.com. You can get one of these. And now we're just going to go to the applications tab. And I'm going to show you here that I have a couple of ones just sitting here. For every person that would like one, you can also use our CLI tool, so you can automate this if you would like for yourself. But let's just say not that many people are going to consume your API. This will come in handy when you're in a large company and you have different departments, for example. When I worked on things in the automotive industry, for example, sometimes they would have APIs that were written by different engineering teams. And so this is the way that they gave each other access to the API. So if you click Add Application, you'll notice there will be 4 different boxes here, okay? Native obviously is going to be for a mobile flow. A single page app is for something like Angular or React. When it says web, it really means more backend to full circle languages like Java or .NET. And then the other one we'll see here is service, which is machine to machine. That means there is no person, there is no necessary demonstration of like an Octa widget or a sign-in box that you would customize. Because in this case, we're just securing that API. So click service and next, and then name it whatever you'd like. So remember, whatever you're naming this application is whoever your client is, whoever is consuming. So this would be like consumer number 12, and then I like to append it with whatever it is. It would be my real world API. And you can issue these programmatically if you'd like with the Octa CLI tool. Click done. And now this has generated for you a client ID and client secret. Now that you just give that to them and they can go on their merry way. But if you would like to know how to restrict certain kinds of access, that requires just one more level D. If you go to API authorization servers, you get one set up for free, and then I added another one for another like Alexa skill that I was doing earlier. If you're interested in how to restrict certain kinds of traffic, or perhaps what kinds of information about your user base, let's say you have an API of users, which is very common as well, you can restrict certain pieces of information here. So if I click on default, I can call that combined set of permissions that I want. It can be called like a custom scope. So if anybody has ever installed an application on their phone and a nice screen pops up that says, hey, this application would like to access your camera, your contacts, etc. Those are permissions that are set in a scope. That's the scope of the permissions that they're using. So over here, I actually set up a custom scope by clicking add scope. You can call it whatever you'd like. So this might be just like I call my manage list. This one might be manage characters. You can call it whatever you'd like, and then display whatever you'd like, and set it as a default if you want. User consent, all of this stuff. If you notice right there, I just set it to manage list. This will become important whenever you create a token, because the token will need to have the name of your scope as part of the request together. If you're interested in individual claims that can come back with that token, that's definitely something that we go over on our YouTube channel. And those are just things like the name of the user, the ID, maybe some information of whatever you or them decide that you want to reveal, depending on whether or not they're approved the scope. Okay, so if you'd like to change anything, you can. I just went ahead and created an empty scope called manage list. And then we're all set to go. If you are interested in what tokens look like, you can go down to the tokens section, but I'm actually going to use Postman to generate this for you. So you can create one here just to play around with if you'd like on your own. But again, I'm going to use Postman for that. Okay, so that's all you really have to do with Octa is go into your applications, the one that we just created. So you notice that there's a Postman client right there, but I'm also going to drill into consumer number 12 and copy like the client ID and client secret or give it to them somewhere. So I'm going to leave it on this page. And then I'm going to pull up our Web API project. Now, the next thing I would do here is I would go into your NuGet packages, and you're going to need the OWIN NuGet package. Okay, this is pretty basic for the .NET framework, and this is what you would need. You would need webapi.owen, pull that down, of which I already have. And once you do that, then you're able to right-click on the project, and you're able to add a Owen startup class once you add that NuGet package. And so when I added that, it gave me this, okay? I did add a couple of things, and we'll go over them now. So what I've added here that is most important is something called authority and audience. This tells, this right here, as it's set up, allows it to pull from your web config over here the actual value, which again, I reference all the way back in Azure. So you're actually passing it twice. You're passing it from here into Azure, and Azure is going to actually hold your authority and audience information. And I'll pull that up for you now so you can kind of see where that lives. Inside of your app service, there's a place called configuration. Click on configuration. You can add a bunch of key value pairs that are more or less hidden. I'm going to click on them so you can see them. If you notice, the audience is, of course, the name of our auth server. Remember, I showed you I had two, and you get one by default. I just went ahead and used that one there. You can create one if you perhaps are at a company that doesn't like to share auth servers, but just in the beginning, this is a great way to get started. And then the authority is going to be the name of your Octa org / OAuth2 / default, which is going to be the name, again, of your audience. So right here, you'll notice mine says coraline.octa.com. That's because I have a named Octa org. When you first sign up for our Octa free dev account, it might say something like dev-123479. That's okay. You have an option in there to go ahead and make it more personalized. But I just wanted to let you know that the only thing that would change would be this right there, that beginning part of that URL. Okay, and that would be the same. I went ahead and just added some things for other parts of this project that I needed at a later date. But this is, again, just a key value pair situation. You can also use Azure Key Vault if you like, but this is one that I just went ahead and allowed the application settings to live directly inside of the app service. This also prevents my juniors from having access to it and accidentally checking it into their code, right? This is a much better place to put it. Okay, so now that we have that in there, and this is all set up to pass through, let's continue looking at the starter. So after I've explained that to you, the next thing it's going to do is to new up a configuration manager that passes OpenID Connect. Hopefully, you've heard of OpenID Connect. If not, I've got lots and lots of blog posts ready for you. OpenID Connect is an extension on top of OAuth that gives an additional piece of information about the user. So instead of just the Boolean yes or no, this user is good, this user can go back and forth, it's a little bit more like, yes, this user is valid, and their name is Jim, and their ID is X. That's what OpenID Connect will do, is it'll add additional pieces to your token. So that sets up that authority right there and runs that configuration. And then I tell the app to use a JSON web token for authentication. Hopefully everybody's familiar with that. JSON web tokens can sometimes be a little more difficult than other times. In fact, if you're interested in newer ways to handle some of this back and forth, you should look up Assetto, and I'll be happy to send a link on Twitter after I'm done with this. Is they haven't really settled on one spec for it, but I love the way that the approach is done. It's a lot more simple. Then all I'm doing is I'm naming up the options here, and then I'm assigning that authority I had up there and the audience right there, and then setting up your keys. And the rest down here came by default. The moment I knew up that ON startup class, all this came with it. The only thing I changed down here, you'll notice, is that I decided to switch to camel case down there and told it to handle date time zone handling through JSON. That's it. Okay, so there really wasn't too many changes in here. And again, both this repo and the blog post will be available to you in the end. Okay, so that's all we've really done here, right? So since I've set up what to do in the .NET Principal class, that means I can test this out, and I should be able to secure this, right? Okay, let's start Postman. Please tell me somebody has tried other things like Fiddler. I love Fiddler. I had a great time with Fiddler in the back in the day, but this is nice and colorful now, and all my juniors prefer it. So here we go. So what I'm doing here is I've created just a basic GET request here, which is using the location test routing right after my hosted instance. That's all I'm done here, okay? So if I were to get it, it should block it, right? Oh, but it doesn't. Why doesn't it block it? Does anybody know? I mean, I set up all the Owen stuff. Why isn't it protecting it? The answer is because I haven't given it an authorize attribute. This is what will secure it. I could also secure the entire controller level. I could put it way up at the top so that any of the cred that I have underneath it, sounds weird to say the cred, any of the REST API requests within the API controller would also be by default secured. But in this case, I left that one open. So now that I've added this, I need to redeploy this by saving that. Added view. Great. Committed. Sync it and push. Cool. All right. So then I look at of course, the GitHub repo. Cool. Added auth attribute is there. Awesome. So let's go back to the deployment center and see if it pulled it. Yep, it did. So see right here, it's added the auth attribute. It's pulled it here. So what I expect to happen is for this to refresh. Just making sure that it's good to go before I try again in Postman. All right, almost there. It's always fun when it boots up. Cool. All right. So let's try it again. Oh, I still got that there. Did I get the right, name the correct app service? I think so. Oh, jumped ahead of myself there. Let's try it again. That's what I expected to have happen. All right. I think that might be caching in the other tab. You should get a 401 unauthorized, okay? As it says built in, authorization has been denied for this request. That's what we want to see. So the only way that you can get into this, of course, is to get an access token, which you can request directly here in Postman. But of course, let's say that your consumer might be a PHP developer or a JavaScript developer. All they should need is the client ID and secret, and they can go ahead and get their own access token issued. But let's do it through here. Let's just have Postman do that. So in order to do that, you click on the authorization tab within Postman, and then make sure you select OAuth 2, because that's what we're doing here. Leave request headers there. And then under access token, you're going to click get new access token. So you can call it whatever you'd like. I'm going to call this easy Porto token. Okay. And if you notice here, there's that access token URL. What this will be is your Octa instance. Remember, this might be dev-12345, OAuth 2 default v1 token. All of this is also in our API documentation. If you'd like to take a look. And then this is where it requests the client ID and secret. So We set that up in Okta for our consumer, correct? Let's go over there and make sure that we grab it. So number 12, let's grab that client ID, put that here, and their secret. Remember scope. Remember how I added manage lists for that auth server? We could have called it whatever we wanted. It could have been managed characters, whatever we wanted. Make sure that you include that scope so the auth server knows to grant you that kind of permission and request the token. Now it shows the actual bearer token right here, and Postman allows you to just use that in all subsequent calls. So now that we have that, I should be able to hit the exact same endpoint and get it back. And we did. So now we've got that completely secured. Nice. All right, so we've done a couple of different things, right? We created a API client access credentials directly in Okta. We tested it out. We were able to make it fail and pass. And now we profit. That's how at least we do some basic security around a basic API. I know that there's a lot of additional ways that um, a developer can go with this. And if you are interested in how to implement even deeper, we have an API blog post on this, and I have a bit.ly up there. I'm just going to leave for a few minutes while I talk. What's interesting about being able to use the client credentials flow in this way is that I didn't have to build any of it. It just kind of works out of the box with an external auth provider. Now, Okta is not the only external auth provider, of course. There's definitely Zero, Identity Server. There's a bunch of different ones that, of course, you can roll yourself or pull off of GitHub. So just know that this was one way in which you can do it, and it's the way that we at least tried to teach all of our devs before I even came on to Okta. I got to work with a bunch of them, and this seemed to be the easiest way for them to get their head wrapped around the flow of how to at least create an API securely so that other people couldn't hit it constantly. After 3 or 4 different data leaks that we had just with new projects being thrown out into whether it was AWS or Azure or something else like Heroku, it seemed like this was just something that we shouldn't take for granted, and we should probably educate how to use OAuth specifically whenever you new up an API. If you're interested in any of the other projects that I've got going on, I'm happy to talk to you guys about that on Twitter. And other than that, I am open for questions. Nope, good. Awesome. Thank you guys so much. Hopefully I tried to make it a little easy. I know that it wasn't always very cooperative with my virtual machine, but you guys were awesomely patient. And I hope you guys have an amazing